This is my review of Daredevil Season 3, and there will be spoilers. Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, is dealing with a crisis of faith and how to balance his life between Matt Murdock and Daredevil. He lets his friends think he's dead for a good chunk of the season because he thinks they'll be safer without him around, which makes no sense since they're both just as prone to putting themselves in danger as he is. But we need drama and tension, so here's more moping Matt Murdock. I really wish that Daredevil would just get over some of these issues that he's been dealing with since Season 1, even if it's just so he can develop some new issues to wrestle with, because honestly, his character in its current form is getting more than a little bit tedious. But he's always been the least interesting character in the show anyway. This season, much like in Season 1, its absolutely show is stolen by Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk, a.k.a. the Kingpin. And it's odd because his performance is honestly more than a little bit hammy and over the top in a show that has a lot more subtle characters. But he's just so much goddamn fun to watch. Like, every time he's on screen, you're hooked on everything he's doing because he just does everything with such crazy intensity and like barely restrained rage. Kind of reminds me of Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective. This season, it really ramps up just how fiendishly clever he is as he manages to socially engineer himself from a guy who's in prison serving a long sentence to a penthouse living criminal boss with the FBI in his pocket. It strains credulity to even imagine someone achieving that, but his rise to reclaiming his former power is so meticulously detailed in this season that you find yourself really buying into it despite the absurdity of the premise. Deborah Ann Woll and Eldon Henson continue to do a good job as Daredevil's close friends Karen Page and Foggy Nelson, but I couldn't help but feel as if some of the time spent developing them further would have been better spent on some more of the trademark martial arts action that the series is known for. Because if I have one major gripe with Daredevil Season 3, it's that there's not nearly as much crime fighting and ass kicking as there was in the first two seasons. You know, I don't mind when a series wants to indulge in some drama or even melodrama, but that's not really what I signed up for in this case. I mean, sure, the show has always contained dramatic elements, but they used to be punctuated with a heaping spoonful of sophomoric violence. Now, I've seen some people on YouTube speculating that this new season was going to be overladen with politically correct messaging. Calm down. This isn't the case. The SJW influence has led to maybe less sex scenes in the show, but they were always really awkward sex scenes anyway, because they were always shot as if they were airing on network TV. So it was always this weird PG-13 sort of sex scene that feels faker than Nicki Minaj's ass. Not that I'd turn her down if she offered my face a new job as her bar stool. The other scene that seemed to push sort of a PC narrative is when Karen's character threatens some cat collars with a gun, you know? But I feel like you can't really call that scene too PC because it was a white person threatening a trio of black youths with a gun, you know, if they didn't behave themselves. It was like way too Dirty Harry-ish to really feel PC. And it was a pretty pro-gun scene. I mean, her behavior was depicted in a positive light, so I feel like maybe the scene did pander to SJWs a little, but it also pandered to conservatives. It walked the line in a really interesting way that might challenge biases on both sides. But I didn't really see much PC influence in this season of Daredevil. Most of it was subtle enough to miss or so slight that it's not even worth remarking on. So if you're too much of a right-wing snowflake to tolerate perspectives you don't like in a TV show, you won't find much to be offended by here, unless you're just desperate to take offense. Rosario Dawson is absent this season and has been replaced by a nun named Sister Maggie, who is like the new caretaker for Daredevil. It's later revealed that she's his mom who gave him up to become a nun because she was struggling with postpartum depression. The whole revelation fell flat for me, as did her character in general. she doesn't really do a bad job. She just never strikes you as being particularly necessary. So remember in season 1 of Daredevil how you wait all season for Matt Murdock to get his signature suit, and when he finally does, it's awesome because up until then he just has this like rag that he ties around his face and looks like a moron. Well, in this season, he goes back to the rag around his face approach and never puts on the Daredevil costume once. Like, one of the main villains of the season, Benjamin Poindexter, dresses in the Daredevil costume, but Matt Murdock, Daredevil, never does. That's bullshit. Speaking of Benjamin Poindexter, he also does a pretty respectable job. He's an FBI agent. I don't know what the actor's name is. Struggling with severe mental issues. He's kind of torn between good and evil. He ultimately chooses evil with a little help from the Kingpin. And though they never use the name Bullseye, that's the character he's actually playing. He's playing Bullseye, one of the main antagonists in Daredevil. Oh, they do actually use the name Kingpin this season, though. You know, they still call him Fisk 90% of the time, but the word Kingpin does occur. And, that's my main problem with the entirety of the Daredevil series. It's like afraid to ask the audience to accept some silliness. Like, why don't they want to use the Daredevil costume? Do they think it looks too silly? Like, do you think it looks, I guess I'll tell you this, it looks fucking less silly than wrapping a rag around his fucking face. You know, that looks ridiculous. They don't want to call Kingpin Kingpin. They don't want to call Bullseye Bullseye. They barely ever called the Punisher back in season 2. Only at the very end did they give him his iconic skull outfit. It's like the show is ashamed to be part of the Marvel Universe. I wish it would just get over its insecurity about being a comic book show and just fucking own it. We live in an age where superhero movies are ubiquitous, guys. You don't have to pussyfoot around it anymore. People get it. So I have some complaints, but one thing the show did very well is it really fleshed out the motivations of even minor characters and made their decisions all seem like rational decisions that one could easily see oneself making in the same situation. No one is written in such a way where they seem like just plot puppets, going wherever the plot needs them to go and doing whatever the plot needs them to do. Every character acts in accordance to their own values and reacts realistically in whatever situations they find themselves in. So you can give the show tremendous credit there because that's a tough feat to pull off. Overall, I think the season is a success. I have my grievances, but nothing that ruins the show. If there's a season 4, I'd definitely like to see more action and less moping. I'd like to see this show embrace its comic book roots more lovingly and stop acting ashamed of its own source material. But as things stand, the show is still really impressive, full of well-defined characters, very tight scripts, interesting themes, and an absolutely unforgettable main antagonist. Now, it's probably going to be a while before they can do Kingpin again, but I do hope that they're able to work him into Season 3 in some capacity. I'd even go so far as to say that maybe he should have his own show. He's really that good. Overall, I'd give Daredevil Season 3 a 7.5 out of 10.